A German shepherd witnessed his owner harming an innocent baby and, in an act of incredible courage, attacked his own owner to defend the child. The animal's protective instinct overcame years of obedience, revealing a loyalty greater to justice than to his violent owner. This moving story shows how animals sense danger and protect the most vulnerable. Prepare yourself for a narrative that will stir your emotions. Leave a like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. What would you do if you had to choose between loyalty and justice? Between obeying the one you've always followed or protecting the one who cannot defend themselves? In the depths of an isolated ranch in rural Texas, a moral dilemma shook not only one family, but an entire community. This is the story of Guardian, a German shepherd who had to make the hardest choice of his life. Imagine a dirt road, winding through rolling green hills, the sky an almost impossible blue punctuated by clouds that look like suspended cotton. The wind whispers through ancient oak trees, while the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixes with the smell of damp earth after a passing shower. It is in this nearly idyllic setting that our story unfolds, a cruel contrast to the drama hidden behind the thick stone walls of the main house at Hope Ranch. Guardian wasn't just a dog, 5 years old, with a black and gold coat shimmering under the sun, eyes watchful like sentinels of an ancient kingdom. He was considered practically a member of the family. Since he was a puppy, his steady steps accompanied Anthony, the ranch owner, across every inch of the land inherited from previous generations. A loyal shadow, a silent companion who knew every command, every gesture, every nuance in the voice of the man who raised him. The residents of the small town of Harmony Creek knew that imposing figure well. "Look, there goes Guardian," the ladies in the town square would whisper, momentarily interrupting their conversations to admire the animal's majestic bearing. If that dog could talk, how many stories would he tell about Hope Ranch? They speculated, without imagining that soon one of those stories would spread by word of mouth, forever transforming their view of that silent four-legged observer. For 10 long years, Teresa, Anthony's wife, tried to get pregnant. 10 cycles of hope and disappointment, of prayer groups and quiet vows, of doctors and local wise women. When the miracle finally happened, at 38 years old, the news spread through town like wildfire. Teresa's expecting. After all this time, God answered her prayers. They commented in the market lines, at the hair salon, after Sunday services. No one noticed, however, how Anthony's expression subtly darkened upon receiving the news. Michael's birth brought a different energy to the ranch. The previously silent rooms now echoed with cries and clear laughter. The room prepared with so much care by Teresa, with restored antique furniture and a carved wooden crib that had belonged to the baby's great-grandmother, became the new center of that private universe. And to everyone's surprise, also Guardian's new watch post. It was almost imperceptible at first. The German shepherd, previously inseparable from Anthony, began to decline his owner's calls to accompany him on ranch duties. His black and gold coat could now be seen constantly at the foot of the crib, his watchful eyes fixed on the small bundle breathing softly between embroidered sheets. When Teresa nursed, he sat close by, head slightly tilted, as if mesmerized by that new creature who had completely transformed the household routine. "This dog is becoming disobedient," Anthony grumbled during dinner, watching how Guardian quickly returned to the baby's room after eating just enough to stay alert. Teresa smiled, finding amusement in that unexpected devotion. "He's just protecting Michael, dear. It's instinct." Instinct. A simple word to describe something as profound and mysterious as the very flow of life. What Teresa didn't know, what no one could suspect, was that this instinct would be tested to its limits in the following months. The annual county fair in Harmony Creek was famous in the region. Colorful banners decorated the town square. The smell of funnel cake and lemonade filled the air, and the square dancing groups who had practiced for months performed proudly before the entire community. It was also the time for the traditional horse betting, when ranchers showcased their best animals, and reputations were built or destroyed in a matter of minutes. Anthony had always been proud of his thoroughbred horses, raised with almost obsessive dedication. That year, more confident than ever, he bet a considerable sum on his black stallion, Hurricane. The defeat was humiliating. In front of the entire town, his animal not only lost to Colonel Davis's horse, but visibly limped in the final stretch, provoking malicious comments and poorly disguised laughter. "Pride comes before the fall," murmured Father Thomas, who was observing the scene with concern. His words would prove prophetic sooner than he imagined. The return to Hope Ranch was marked by a dense, almost palpable silence. Teresa, with Michael asleep in her arms, watched her husband apprehensively, his knuckles white from gripping the reins so tightly. When they arrived at the main house, Anthony got down from the buggy without helping her, heading directly to the study where he kept the bottle of whiskey reserved for special occasions. The first object broken was a crystal vase that had belonged to Teresa's mother. The second, a picture frame with their wedding photo. The third, fourth, and fifth were lost in the whirlwind of fury that followed. Michael woke up startled, his distressed crying echoing through the old walls. Teresa ran to the bedroom, locking the door with trembling hands as silent tears streamed down her face. That's when she noticed Guardian, body tense as a violin string about to snap, eyes fixed on the door, ears erect, catching every sound. Coming from the hallway, he was no longer the docile dog everyone knew. In his place was a primal sentinel, connected by ancestral instinct to his most fundamental mission, protecting the cub of the pack. The days that followed were of apparent calm. Anthony seemed regretful, bringing wildflowers for Teresa, helping with small household tasks, looking at his son with distant curiosity. But there was a calculated coldness in his gestures, an underlying tension that didn't escape Teresa's notice, nor Guardian's. Eleanor, the region's oldest wise woman, had eyes that seemed to see beyond the visible. During a visit to Bless, the baby against harm, she noticed the altered dynamic of the house. "I'll leave something with you," she said, taking a small medal of St. Francis of Assisi from her patchwork bag. With hands wrinkled by time, she carefully tied it to Guardian's collar. "The saint protects animals, but sometimes it is the animals who protect us," she explained enigmatically. It was on a Wednesday afternoon, after a particularly silent lunch, that Anthony finally verbalized what had been corroding his insides like acid. "Since this boy was born, it feels like I've ceased to exist in this house," he snapped, while Teresa folded tiny, freshly washed clothes. "Even my dog abandons me because of him." The argument escalated quickly, words sharp as daggers cutting the air between them. Anthony advanced towards Teresa, finger pointed, face twisted into an unrecognizable mask of resentment. That's when it happened. The growl started low, almost imperceptible, growing in volume and intensity until it became impossible to ignore. Guardian positioned himself between the couple, legs planted firmly on the polished wooden floor, the fur on his neck bristling, lips pulled back, revealing perfectly white, deadly sharp teeth. Never in 5 years had that sound been directed at his owner. The shock on Anthony's face would have been comical in another situation. He took a step back, confusion and rage mixing in his gaze. "Did you see that? Did you see what your son did? Even my dog is turning against me now." He slammed the door on his way out, leaving behind a heavy silence, interrupted only by Teresa's rapid breathing and Michael's soft snores, oblivious to the drama unfolding around him. That night, seized by a mixture of fear and determination, Teresa called her sister in town. "I need you to come stay with me for a few days," she whispered into the phone, glancing nervously at the door. "Things aren't good here." What she didn't know was that Anthony was listening to the conversation from the office extension, a new plan already forming in his disturbed mind. The next morning, Teresa found Guardian missing. "I had a kennel built out back," Anthony explained during breakfast, a smile not reaching his eyes. "A dog his size shouldn't be inside the house. It's dangerous for the baby." The kennel was more a prison than a shelter, fenced in on all sides with only a small covered area against the sun and rain. Teresa protested, but Anthony was inflexible. "He's my dog. I decide what's best." The word "my" echoed through the room, loaded with a meaning that sent a chill down Teresa's spine. What Anthony didn't foresee was the extraordinary intelligence of his loyal companion. On the first night, Guardian waited patiently until the house lights went out. With meticulous precision, he began to dig under the kennel fence. The soil, damp from the recent rain, made his work easier. Hours later, an opening large enough allowed him to slip out to freedom. Teresa almost cried out in fright when, upon waking to feed Michael during the night, she found Guardian's familiar silhouette sitting by the crib. His eyes gleamed in the dim light. Vigilant, she put a finger to her lips, an instinctive gesture, as if the animal could understand the need for silence. And perhaps he did understand, for he remained motionless, only his eyes following her every move. Before dawn, Guardian voluntarily returned to the kennel, skillfully, replacing the removed earth to disguise his escape route. When Anthony came to check on him during his morning routine, he found the German Shepherd lying quietly, seemingly resigned to his new condition. If he noticed the slight accumulation of dirt under the animal's paws, he didn't comment. This pattern continued for weeks. Each night, Guardian escaped to check on Michael and Teresa. Each morning, he voluntarily returned to his prison. It was as if he had established his own patrol system, a protective routine that only he fully understood. The community of harmony. Creek had always been close-knit, especially the ladies of the prayer group led by Mrs. Evelyn. Noticing Teresa's recent withdrawal from church activities, they began making regular visits to Hope Ranch, always bringing apple pie, sugar cookies, pumpkin bread, culinary excuses to observe the situation more closely. That medal on Guardian's collar. Eleanor gave it to him, didn't she? Mrs. Evelyn asked during one of these visits, while Teresa made coffee in the kitchen. When Teresa confirmed, the elder woman exchanged significant glances with her companions. St. Francis is watching over this house, she murmured, discreetly making the sign of the cross. The visits became more frequent, always when Anthony was away, working in the distant pastures. The ladies brought not only food but also words of comfort, whispered prayers, and most importantly, a watchful eye for signs of danger. Winter arrived with unexpected fury that year. A particularly violent storm isolated Hope Ranch for 2 days. The winds howled like lost souls around the century-old house. The power failed in the early hours, and the old generator in the basement refused to work properly. Michael, now 3 months old, suffered from colic intensified by the damp weather. His cries of pain reverberated through the walls, amplified by the echo of the floorboards, making any conversation, any clear thought impossible. Teresa tried to soothe him desperately, pacing back and forth in the darkened room, lit only by candles that cast dancing shadows on the walls. She hummed lullabies in a trembling voice, massaged his tiny belly with almond oil, tried every technique passed down through generations of mothers in her family. Nothing worked. On the 3rd day of isolation, with supplies dwindling and nerves frayed, Anthony was on the verge of a breakdown. The incessant crying, the inability to leave the property due to roads blocked by mud, the claustrophobic feeling of being trapped with a problem he couldn't solve. All this fueled an inner storm that rivaled the one raging outside. "Make that. Child, shut up," he finally yelled, throwing a glass he was holding against the wall. The glass shattered into 1,000 glittering fragments, startling the baby even more, whose crying intensified until it became almost a howl of despair. That's when Anthony completely lost control. With determined steps, he headed to the crib, where Teresa had just placed Michael after another frustrated attempt to calm him. "If you can't make him stop, maybe I can," he snarled, reaching his hands towards the baby. What happened next occurred in a matter of seconds, but for Teresa, watching in horror, it seemed to unfold in slow motion. A black and gold blur shot across the room like lightning. The impact of Guardian's powerful body against Anthony produced a dull thud as both hit the floor. There was no bite, no violent attack, just the strategically positioned weight of the German Shepherd keeping the man pinned down. A continuous low growl emanating from his throat, eyes fixed on those of his former master with a clear message. This far, no further. "Get this dog off me!" Anthony yelled, fear finally overcoming the rage in his voice. Teresa remained paralyzed, time seeming to suspend itself in that crucial moment. That's when she finally saw clearly. She saw beyond the carefully maintained appearances, beyond the excuses she had created to justify her husband's increasingly erratic behavior. She saw the real danger Michael was in under that roof. She saw the incredible choice Guardian had made, protecting the most vulnerable, even if it meant turning against the man who had raised him since he was a puppy. "He'll only get off you. When Michael and I are safe," she declared in a voice she didn't recognize as her own. Firm, determined, without a tremor. "And if you ever try to harm us again, it won't be just Guardian you'll have to face." Slowly, with the baby in her arms, she backed away towards the door. "Stay," she ordered Guardian, who obeyed perfectly, keeping Anthony pinned down while she gathered a few essential things and headed for the pickup truck parked in the garage. The rain had slowed, but the roads were still practically impassable. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except getting Michael away from that toxic environment, from that constant threat she had ignored for too long. Seconds after Teresa left, Guardian relaxed his posture, allowing Anthony to get up. The man straightened his wrinkled clothes, staring at the animal with a mixture of rage and incomprehension. "Traitor," he muttered, heading towards the cabinet where he kept his hunting rifle. What he didn't expect was to find Father Thomas, standing at the living room door, soaked from the rain, eyes wide, having witnessed the entire scene. "Put that gun down, Anthony," he ordered, with the authority that only a spiritual leader of decades could command. "I think we have a lot to talk about." The unexpected presence of the pastor wasn't a coincidence. Concerned about the family's isolation during the storm, especially after noticing Anthony's erratic behavior in recent weeks, the ladies of the prayer group had convinced the priest to check on the situation as soon as conditions allowed. "There's nothing to talk about," Anthony reacted, still holding the rifle, though pointing it at the floor. "My dog attacked me. My wife left me. My life is falling apart, and you want to talk?" "No, Anthony," the priest replied in a calm but unyielding voice. "Your dog protected a helpless child. Your wife protected her son. And your life is falling. Part because you refuse to face your own demons." The words hit Anthony like a physical blow. For a moment it seemed he would react violently, but then, like a candle whose flame suddenly goes out, all resistance left him. He fell heavily into the nearest armchair, the rifle slipping from his suddenly strengthless fingers, face buried in his hands. "I don't know what's happening to me, Father," he confessed, voice choked. "Since Michael was born, I feel like something dark has awakened inside me, something I can't control." Guardian watched the scene from the living room entrance, body still tense, ready to intervene again if necessary. The priest noticed the St. Francis medal gleaming on the animal's collar, a powerful symbol in that moment of revelation. Some men have difficulty accepting they are no longer the center of the universe when a child arrives, he explained patiently. Others carry wounds from their own childhood that reopen when they become fathers. The important thing, Anthony, is to recognize that you need help. In town, Teresa found shelter at her sister's house. Through tears, she recounted everything that had been happening in recent months. The fits of rage, the growing isolation, the small cruelties disguised as discipline, and finally, the incident of that night. "You need to report him," her sister insisted, rocking Michael, who was finally sleeping peacefully. "This is abuse, Teresa. Today he tried to hurt the baby. Tomorrow could be worse." Teresa knew her sister was right, but something prevented her from taking that definitive step. Years of conditioning, of believing that family problems should be solved within the home, of fearing the judgment of the small community where everyone knew each other. "I'll give him some time to think, to cool down," she finally decided. "Then we'll decide what to do." What Teresa didn't expect was to receive a visit from Father Thomas the next morning. With a serious but compassionate expression, the clergyman conveyed a surprising request. Anthony had agreed to seek professional help. More than that, he had admitted that his behavior was out of control and that he feared what he might do if he continued down that destructive path. He wants to voluntarily admit himself to a specialized clinic in Houston. the priest explained. One that treats both alcoholism and anger management issues. But first, he'd like to speak with you. The meeting was tense, charged with contradictory emotions. In the priest's office, neutral territory, Anthony seemed smaller, more fragile, stripped of the arrogance that usually coated his presence. "I don't expect you to forgive me now," he said, looking more at his own hands than at Teresa. "I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that I will do everything it takes to change, to be the father Michael deserves." It was a long road ahead. The initial 30-day stay extended to 3 months, then 6. The diagnosis revealed layers of unprocessed trauma, patterns of abuse passed down through generations, toxic expectations about masculinity rooted since childhood. During this period, Teresa discovered a strength within herself she didn't know she possessed. With the help of the community, especially the women of the prayer group who organized an impressive support network, she took over the management of the ranch. To general surprise, she proved extremely competent, implementing improvements that significantly increased the property's productivity. And Guardian? The German Shepherd became a local celebrity. The dog who chose to protect a baby over loyalty to his owner was how people referred to him. Children asked to visit him, bringing treats and toys. Elders told and retold the story, adding fantastic details to each new version. The St. Francis medal on his collar gained company, a blessed blue ribbon from a special service, where Father Thomas spoke eloquently about how, sometimes, God uses the most unexpected creatures to deliver his most important lessons. When Anthony finally returned, there was a different peace in his eyes. The recovery process would continue for years, with regular therapy and participation in support groups. But the first step, the hardest one, had already been taken. Regaining the trust of his wife and the community would be a slow process, full of progress and setbacks. But perhaps the most symbolic challenge lay in his relationship with Guardian. The dog, who had never shown any aggression before that critical incident, now kept a cautious distance from his former owner, always strategically positioning himself between Anthony and Michael when they were in the same room. With the help of a specialized trainer, recommended by the clinic's therapists, Anthony worked patiently to re-establish the broken bond. It was no longer a matter of dominance or control, as it used to be, but of mutual respect, of recognizing the animal's intelligence and sensitivity. "Dogs are mirrors of our soul," the trainer explained during one of the sessions. "Guardian didn't attack you out of malice or rebellion. He made an ethical choice within his parameters of understanding about protection and family. Now, you need to show him that you are also capable of making that same choice." The most touching moment of that journey of reconciliation occurred during Michael's baptism party, when the boy turned 1 year old. After the ceremony at the community church, decorated with white and blue flowers, family and friends gathered in the spacious backyard of Hope Ranch for the celebration. Guardian, as always, stayed close to Michael, who was now taking his first, unsteady steps across the grass. Anthony, watching from a distance, walked slowly towards the two. Teresa held her breath, still apprehensive despite all the progress of recent months. Kneeling a few feet away, Anthony held out his hand in a gesture they had practiced dozens of times during the retraining sessions. "Come, buddy," he called, in a soft voice, different from the authoritative command he used to use. For a moment that seemed eternal, Guardian remained motionless, eyes fixed on Anthony's, as if assessing not just the command, but the essence of the man who issued it. Then, slowly, he approached, allowing Anthony's hand to lightly touch his head. It wasn't yet the absolute trust of before, but it was a start, a symbol of the profound transformation that had occurred in that family. Michael, completely oblivious to the silent drama unfolding, toddled towards the two, laughing in that carefree way only children can. With striking naturalness, he leaned on Guardian for balance, then reached out his little arms to his father. Anthony hesitated, looking at Teresa as if asking for permission. She nodded, tears gleaming in her eyes. When he picked up his son, Guardian didn't interfere. For the first time in many months, he allowed Anthony to approach Michael without his vigilant supervision. Around the animal's neck, the St. Francis medal and the blue baptism ribbon caught the golden glow of the setting sun, silent symbols of the extraordinary journey they had traveled together. This true story reminds us that true protection doesn't always come from where we expect. That sometimes our guardian angels have four paws and a heart that sees beyond appearances, recognizing the true essence of family love. And that redemption, even in the darkest moments, is within reach of those who have the courage to face their own demons. As night fell softly over Hope Ranch, wrapping the family gathered in the backyard in welcoming shadows, a certainty hung in the air like a silent blessing. Love, in its many mysterious forms, always finds a way to bloom, even in the most improbable soil, even after the most devastating storms.